If you continue to blame the past for your present and your future, you're never going to get anywhere. You got to turn and just look at the future, pick a thing, and in spite of whatever you think happened to you, whatever you think has gone wrong, look at the future, go, that's where I'm going. Yeah, but what about the past? Past is over, it doesn't matter, can't fix it, can't change it, that's where I'm going. That's how I kind of try to live.
I'm here today with Christopher Titus. And if you are a fan of comedy, specifically stand-up, you probably require no introduction, but I'm going to do one anyways. So you, sir, are a stand-up comedian, an actor, a writer, a podcaster, an executive producer, a director. You run your own production company. You have a huge following on YouTube, but you are also an expert on bonfires and what to do if you have fallen into one. Yeah. And most importantly, as we will discuss at length during today's conversation and using your own interpretations, you, sir, are a tremendous failure. So on that note, Mr. Titus, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, man. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on, Zach. We've been friends for a while. On our Sundays, we have seen each other at the ragged edge of our abilities constantly. And so it's good to be on with a friend.
Yes, and one of my favorite keepsakes of all time, and you may not even remember this. You remember the event, but you probably don't know this part. A couple of years ago, it was before the pandemic. You've been fairly well known during the Sunday Tony Horton Ninja Group to have a rip or two on your hands. And you had one where I think you had like 8, and you had this picture where you were like this. That picture was taken with my camera. So in my camera roll, just randomly, you're going through, here are my kids, and here's this thing. I have a picture of Titus going like this with 8 rips on his hands. One of my favorite photos.
With my hamburger hands. I always say, how many times have I said that at Tony's? If there's ever a murder at Tony Horton's house, they're going to find my DNA everywhere. They're going to be like, Titus is either dead or he killed these people.
Yes, exactly. But one of the things, there are a lot of things that I love about Sundays, but I'm sure you can attest to this, is that it doesn't take long for you to get a sense of somebody's character. Because, man, those workouts are hard, and there's adversity, and you really see, like you said, not only people at the ragged edge, but facing down fears. And you get to see pretty quickly what somebody made of.
That's true, man. And it's also on so many different ways, not just the exertion part of it where you're trying to do stuff you've never done. I always just see it as a challenge. It's you see who people are when they fail, which is interesting to watch to me. Like you and I remember the first time, because I'm kind of on the lower end compared to some of the badasses that are there, and I'm fine with that because I don't, you guys are and I remember when we first started, everybody kind of moves up, and I got really quick over the fact that I was at the lower end of performance. And I've just started, and what happens is after a couple weekends at Tony's, you get to this place where you're like, all right, I don't need to worry about what those guys are doing. I need to worry about what I need to do. So I've been working on everything, and it's getting better every time. And I saw you do that early, where you didn't really give a shit about what anybody else did. And then there's people that fail, and all of a sudden, they're just screaming at themselves. Like they're all like, I'm an idiot, can't believe I did that. And they're mad, and you just want to go, no one really cares that you're mad at you. The only person upset here is you. So, and the people that are funny and what I love about the group and more than anything is how supportive it is. It's good to go out on Sundays to do something as hard as those workouts are and to have a bunch of supportive people behind you. And it's interesting how fast the unsupportive get edited out, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Not only that, but the other thing you learn very quickly, not just about people that are facing the fear or the adversity, having gone for a while now, we see a lot of people that come once. Yeah. You don't see a lot of people that come twice. Really? Because the first time you're like, I don't know what this is, but I can say I got to work out at Tony Horton's house. And then they show up and they think, what have I gotten myself into? They wake up the Monday morning after, never again. It's the people that show up a second time that says something.
Yeah, but there's some stuff that so people that don't know, I'm sure you've talked about it, but Tony has this list that we show up to, and I've kind of avoided now when I show up to go look at the list. I do what I force myself to, but it's a list of exercises, usually between 14 and 16 or 14 and 18. And at one point you just look at the list and there's no good news on the list ever. There's never an exercise where you're like, oh, we're going to, what are we doing? These are sit down finger flexes. These are going to be easy. it's always some horror, and it's just horror show after horror show, and and the people, I keep showing up because I want to finally get some of them I can't do. I found myself one day recently, 2 times ago. Tony's got this 20-foot pull-up bar, and you have to climb a rope to it. And I'm at the 20-foot top doing pull-ups after I've climbed the rope, and it's all this extra that he makes you do, because you have to do an internal kind of assessment, like, okay, if I do too many pull-ups, I'm gonna drop 20 feet because I can't get down this rope. So it's all the mental. I love it, and people that are scared. I mean, the a rope, a beam, post. Holy crap! The stuff that we have to do. You find yourself hanging 17, 18 feet in the air, and then you've got to transfer to another thing. And all I'll say is it's like martial arts. I trained martial arts a long time. It's like martial arts. You get to this place where the fear goes away, and it just becomes about technique. And I think that's what I love about it. And the people that continue to show up inspire me. You're one of the dudes that inspires me. You, Wes, there's the guys that show up that I'm like, all right, I can maybe be with those guys one day if I just stop drinking red wine.
Well, I appreciate that. So speaking of the Sunday group, I wanted to start there because obviously that's how we met. Now we got to know each other.
Right.
And there's a part of the story that you don't know that I'm hoping you're going to enjoy. But when you first showed up to the workout, the first time that we had met, my response was, I think I know that guy. I think he's a comedian. I recognize him. So I wasn't a fan of you at that time. So I knew of you. And I'm like, I think maybe he's got a show or whatever. So I wasn't that familiar with you. But Wes was talking all about you. I'm like, all right, so I'll go on YouTube and I'll watch a couple of clips. And I don't know if this is by design, if this is the YouTube algorithm, if you wanted it to work this way, but I did a quick search. And the very first thing I came across was a 5-minute clip of one of your stand-up routines where you were talking all about retarded people. And my first reaction was, oh, man, he's one of those guys, right? Like, what an asshole. And you may know some of this, you may not know some of this, but the world of disabilities and special needs and people with all kinds of various physical or mental disabilities, huge part of my world my entire life. Made a documentary film for 8 years about the first quadriplegic to become a scuba diver. I've got other friends of mine that have some mental disabilities. My father specializes.
How come I don't know this? We've been friends for a couple of years. How come I don't know this?
Because we're too busy destroying ourselves during this workout to have really in-depth conversations. I'm bleeding. So my father, who spent his entire life dedicated to teaching kids with learning disabilities and all these other things. My wife, the reason she became a teacher is because she wanted to help kids in special ed. So I just had like this immediate reaction, like, man, I wanted to like this guy, and here he is talking about retarded people. And in 5 minutes, I don't know how you did it, but I became one of your biggest fans because you are so smart in how you can take something like the word retarded. And for anybody that's offended by this right now, I understand why you are. Watch the 5-minute clip. We're going to link to it. You're going to see why I'm not. But the way that you turned the definition of that word around was not only smart psychologically, but it was hilarious. And watching it the 4th or 5th time and preparing for this interview, still in tears. It was so good. And you apply that psychology to everything, where I take something that should be offensive, like you should have been canceled 10 times by now. But you take something like you can make Trump voters laugh at Trump jokes. You can make Biden voters laugh at Biden jokes. You can make people that care a lot about others with special needs laugh their asses off at the word retarded. That's not by accident.
Yeah, the bit you're talking about is called the word retard, and I have a lot of friends. You know, my world is a lot of people with disabilities. One of my nieces has a really rare, rare disorder on the autism spectrum, really rare. And Julie, and we grew up with her, and then I have Michael Arona, who's a friend of mine. He's a comic who has got CP, and he's so funny. And so and the weird thing is, the further you know, the more you know about hang out with and be around people with disabilities, you realize how bad the world really messes with them. And it's constant. It's constant. And I think a lot of the world does it unconsciously, but a lot of it doesn't. Some of it's real brutal. And so I would hear stories from Mike, and I would see it happen. We'd be out somewhere and something would happen. And and the word retard kept coming up. And I was, and then I watched these idiots, these capable people, like had no disability whatsoever, and yet they're living, they're addicted to drugs, or they're beating their wives, or they can't seem to hold a job, and I'm like, and then I'm watching these guys with disabilities, supposedly can't handle it, becoming lawyers, running their own businesses. Mike's an actor, comedian. He speaks. He travels all over the world speaking. And I'm like, well, these able-bodied people seem to be more retarded. So I break down the definition. And I change the definition. And I've had so many parents of kids with disabilities just write me, and they start out exactly like you do. When I saw this bit, I was so furious. The title is called The Word Retard. It's on my YouTube channel. And then they would say, but I watched it, and we were laughing, and then I brought my son in to watch it, and he was clapping. You've changed the definition of what this word means for me. You gave the word power as opposed to you make it something that kills people. So yeah, man. I mean, the best comics in the world, Carlin and Lenny Bruce would flip stuff. That's your job. Robin Williams, there's the guys that I love would take something, and Carlin was a wordsmith, and he would take it and go, let's analyze the word. And next thing you know, you're like, oh shit, I never thought of it like that. So thank you. It's a high compliment that you said that, because that's what I tried to do with the bit. That's exactly what I tried to do.
And the interesting thing too is that, like I said, again, when I first started watching it, very offended, like, oh God, where is this going? But it wasn't just a matter of you turned the word. It was the way that you performed it. I could tell it wasn't just well written. I could tell you genuinely felt it. Yeah. And it actually choked me up, because it wasn't just a matter of here's a comic using this word to get laughs. It's here's a comic and a person, a human being that genuinely wants to protect and champion people with disabilities. And like you said, it's the white trash beating his wife. There's the retard, right? Like just the way that but it actually choked me up. I'm like, okay, I'm instantly a fan of this guy. And from there, I went down the rabbit hole and watched hours and hours. And then we finally scheduled this interview. I've rewatched all the same stuff in a different order, which we're going to get to how that was actually really interesting this time. But I wanted to start there because I want to make sure that people go to that link and see that, because I think that of all the things you've done, it's one of the best encapsulations of who you are.
Oh, that's nice. We did a movie. I always wanted to. Michael wrote an actor, comic. Always wanted to get his shot. He wanted his shot and deserved it. And I had this idea one day. I just called him. I said handicapped police officers, and he goes, what? And I go, I just had this idea pop in my head. So I wrote a pilot for Comedy Central that we filmed, that Bryan Cranston directed, that didn't get picked up, called Special Unit. And then it was just something that was burning in my head. So then I wrote a full-length movie script a couple years later, and it took a lot of years to get it done. But if you go to Amazon Prime, there is a movie I wrote and directed called Special Unit, where we use 16 disabled. I hate that word. I don't even know how to, what's the new word, but something that, actors with disabilities in the movie, and it's basically they're the heroes of the movie, and I'm the worst human. I tried to play every dickhead who makes fun of disabled people, and let them, and they run it. They take down the bad guy. They stop. By the way, I wrote a comedy where there's a school shooting in it. That's what.
Well, that's another thing people should put on their list, because I watched that as well, and it's got at least 3 or 4 moments, like literally on the floor laughing kind of comedy.
Thanks,
so,
man. Thanks, man.
But again, it was done with all the heart in the world, which makes it work, because we know you're doing it for the benefit, right, as opposed to at the expense of. There's a big difference between those two.
Here's what I learned: dumb people. It's the thing I did with this new bit that's in the new special about white supremacy. There's a way to lead. Sometimes you can lead people that don't agree with you into a room where they think they agree with you. I did it with Arm the Children too, where all of a sudden they realize, oh shit, he just flipped the entire thing on me, and I've been wrong. And and half of those people get pissed off too. So, but I'm still here. Everything's working out.
Well, the reason I wanted to start with the word disability, so to speak,
right,
is that this is one of the things that I talked about in my documentary film, and was really the subject of it. And the takeaway was that everybody has a disability.
Yeah.
Right. And if we focus on our disabilities, we're just going to wallow in whatever is keeping us down. We're going to make excuses, as opposed to let's focus on what we are capable of and focus on our abilities.
Right.
And one of the things that I think many could say about you, yourself included, is that you didn't have the ideal childhood. Anybody that watches any of your specials knows a lot about your upbringing, especially if they've watched your
Yeah.
sitcom as well. And many would see that as a disability, right? So the word disabilities, we think of it, it's a guy in a wheelchair, right?
There
Or
you
a
go. I
girl in a
like that
wheelchair.
depth. I
And
like that depth.
it goes far beyond that, but we all have disabilities in certain contexts, right? If somebody's
True.
5 feet tall, in the context of becoming a player in the NBA, their height is a disability. If they want to be an acrobat or an American Ninja Warrior, now it's their superpower. So it's, for me, disability is all about context. And in the context of being successful and educated and well-rounded, I would call your upbringing a bit of a disability.
Yeah, all
So
of those.
let's,
Yes.
for anybody that hasn't watched Norman Rockwell is Bleeding or the many, many, many hours of the retelling of your childhood, what's the 5-minute version, just so people get a sense of where it is that you originally came from?
My mom. Okay, my parents were a mentally ill genius, and was my mom, and then another alcoholic, hardworking badass. That was my dad. And when I say badass, I mean it in good and bad ways. So I was raised. I was raised in a kind of just total chaos. That's why the world doesn't bother me that much. I'll get mad at certain things, but I don't respond to it with panic or curling up in a fetal position. I stand up and I'm ready to fight back because that's how I was raised. So mom was mentally ill. Mom had a 185 IQ, spoke 4 languages, played concert piano, and was crazy as a shithouse rat. She actually shot and killed her third husband. She, she showed up to my high school graduation in in an army jacket, white vinyl go-go boots, and that was it. So I've lived a weird life. My dad started drinking at beer o'clock. Noon is beer o'clock. I was driving him home from this place called the Pizza Shack when I was, 9, 10 years old because he'd been drinking too much, which is weird. With such a weird integrity in my father. He would drink so much he couldn't drive, but he had taught me to drive so early. He's like, I'm going to let you drive home. You're not licensed, but I'm pretty hammered and you're 9, but you can handle it better than I can. So he had an odd integrity. He had an odd, it was such a, delusional integrity, but my dad had this weird kind of integrity. So I was raised by those people. Divorce was bad. Ran away when I was 12, and lived with my mom, and everything my dad had been talking about my whole life about her. Because there was things like I was left with relatives. My sister on my mom's side, my mom dropped off her friends one time and just disappeared for like 3 weeks, and they found her in a doorway in San Francisco. She covered in her own menstrual blood, and that's the phone call we got when I was and I'm a teenager at that point, and it would just things got out of hand all the time, and I'm so used to that now. So when I lived with her, we got evicted 3 times. At one point, I got the sheriff would be like, "Hey man, so you gotta move out." I'm like, "Oh, how's it going, Doug?" I'm saying a 12-year-old shouldn't know the sheriff is what I'm saying. And then I would correct the form. This form isn't exactly right. Could you fill this out again? So you shouldn't know that at 12. So my upbringing was chaotic. I was a DF student, and then one day I remember being 5 years old. I went to sleep listening to Bill Cosby, and I decided to be a comedian when I was 5. And then kind of after that, nothing else really mattered. I lived my life, and telling people at 5 you're going to be a comedian is like telling them you're going to be an astronaut or a cowboy. They don't care.
I'm not sure that that's actually even as good as that. That seems even exactly. Because if you do become an astronaut, well, then that's amazing. If you do become a comedian, is that still a good thing? I don't know, right?
They have to make up at family gatherings. They have to make up another job that you do. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so my parental upbringing was pretty. Listen, man. This is when I start to get into a gray area. People tell me, "Oh, I feel so bad you were raised like that." But if you look what I did with it, I couldn't be where I am without being raised by that. So when people have sympathy or they're like, "Oh my God, what a horrible upbringing," it was just my upbringing. I think there's so many things in life that I didn't get here in spite of. I got here because of it. Because now I know. Because comedy, 2% of people make it in show business, 2%, and I've been in it for 40 years. And whether I'm not Dave Chappelle famous, not Dave Chappelle rich, but I make a good living doing what I love, and without the chaotic insanity of my life, I don't think I can handle the chaotic insanity of show business. So I never, it was just my life. So many people take their lives and they keep looking backwards at it. Like, oh my God, look how I was raised. This is why I do that now. Well, if you know that, why are you still doing that? If you know that if you continue to blame the past for your present and your future, you're never going to get anywhere. You got to turn and just look at the future, pick a thing, and in spite of whatever you think happened to you, whatever you think has gone wrong, look at the future and go, that's where I'm going. Yeah, but what about the past? Past is over. Doesn't matter. Can't fix it. Can't change it. That's where I'm going. That's how I kind of try to live.
And that is the thing that I appreciate about you and other people is that there's a moment where there's a choice. And the vast majority of people, whether you were raised by an alcoholic or there was abuse or whatever it might be, they repeat the cycle. The obvious option is they're going to repeat the cycle. If somebody beats their kids, that person that was the kid is probably going to beat their kids, is going to beat their kids, is going to beat their kids. But then there's somebody that says, nope, I'm going to consciously make the choice that I'm going to break the cycle and I'm going to focus on what I can do going forwards. And so few people do that. And as soon as I started listening to your stand-up specials, that's what stuck out. You had the choice to just say, I was a DF student, like, look at the hands that I was dealt. Like, can you blame me for being a giant, massive failure? And instead you decided,
Right,
you know what,
exactly.
I am going to continue to be a massive failure, but at a very, very high level. And just for a point of reference, for anybody that's like, why do you keep calling him a failure? Watch a stand-up. You'll know what I'm talking about. You have an entire special dedicated to one failure after another, to another, after another, and it's brilliant.
Yeah, the
But
church
it's the
of the
fact
epic
that
fail. The church
exactly.
of the epic fail. Yeah.
And it's just one thing after another. And just when you think it can't get any crazier, oh, no, but wait, there's more.
And then at the end, it flips to like one of our American superheroes basically takes it all away in one sentence. That's a good special. All true, by the way. That Bruce Who story happened. I still get chills when I think about it.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I really appreciate is when people make that choice and decide, you know what, despite what I've been handed, I'm going to find a way to make the best of it and focus on my abilities, again, instead of my disabilities.
You have to be careful, too, because I made a choice. My dad got divorced 6 times. And he got divorced so many times. I used to say he had a marriage license gold card as one of my early jokes I wrote. And so I made a decision as a kid that I'm not going to get divorced. I'm going to work on it, make sure it's right. And because I made that choice, I stayed with the wrong person for way too long. So you kind of have to. It's a balance. You have to figure out what the best thing for you is. Because no matter what she did, I was like, nope, I'm not getting divorced. Because my dad did that. So you have to be careful not to make choices, not to make what you think are positive choices also based on your past, because they may not be positive choices. You just got to turn towards the future and keep going. Try to make the right choice for you. But it's weird when people use that as an excuse. I was just thinking when you were saying it, the guy who got beaten as a kid beats his kids. And on my son, I acted like my dad. After the divorce, I kind of acted like my dad towards my son a little bit, and we had a long talk about that. Actually, we've had a couple, but even yesterday I talked about it, and I kind of tried to explain to him. I said, man, I thought that was the way you get here, and it didn't make a difference. And so, it's dude, I don't know, man. We're an absurd bag of blood, hair, bone, just walking through the planet trying to figure shit out. And as I said in my new special, no one's going to remember us anyway. So why aren't you just doing the best for you while you're here and the best for the people around you? I don't know.
And not only are you a bag of bones, you're a bag of somebody else's bones in your jaw. If anybody watches your latest special.
Yeah. Well, the latest special, we actually, I got some people, there's that white supremacy that some people are, most everybody, the overwhelming response, 98% is like, dude, this is great. It's amazing how a bit about disproving white supremacy brings out the inner KKK in so many people, dude. Some of the stuff I'm getting on the comments, because it blew up. It got so many views, but it's amazing what people you see, or you feel like, dude, you're self-hating. You're hating yourself. No, I hate you, racist. I don't hate me. I think I'm awesome. So yeah, man. Listen. I was lucky enough. Whatever you do, and you do the same with what you're doing right now with this podcast. You are trying to make a difference. We only get a little time here, so you can be crazy, you can do whatever, but whatever you do well, there's a bonus if you try to do something good with it. I don't, I try in my shows to always give people. What I loved about George Carlin was that how brilliant he was. He's a wordsmith. The guy was literally. I still watch some of his bits, and I'm like, well, thanks for mining that subject, because no one else is ever going to be able to write a joke about that, because you went to every corner and just mined it. But he never. There's a lot of times he left us with a crotchetiness, a no hope. There was no solution. It was just, this is how it is. And so I always try in my comedy, I'll drag you through that part, but then I want to go, oh, okay, hey, it could get better. Try this. Maybe this is going to work. I try to give people I try to bring a little light to the situation.
Which is another reason that I absolutely love all of it, is that despite it being a lot of doom and gloom, all somebody has to do is go on YouTube and read the show special names. That's it, right? And we've got Amerigeddon, 5th annual End of the World tour, Love is Evil, with a spelling error, by the way. I don't know if anybody's pointing that out.
No, it's backwards. It's love backwards.
Oh, is that what
Lovevol.
How about that?
Love is evil.
Yeah, so what's interesting about all of your specials, at least for me, is that the first time I watched it, I'm very much a completionist. I'm very OCD that way. If somebody introduces something to me, I got to start from the beginning and I must watch them all in order because that's the way the creator intended it, right? This time, I was like, I've already seen everything. And I just gone to your latest special. I'm like, you know what? Let me just go backwards. Let me just say that having gone backwards and watching Norman Rockwell is Bleeding plays so differently, because you're talking all about your first wife and your marriage, and the chaos hadn't happened yet. And then you watch that before you watch the Titus show, and I know it's just called Titus, but like the Titus show itself, the sitcom. It's really interesting to see it backwards and see the de-evolution in a different order.
Yes. I slowly turn into a zygote, an intellectual zygote, where I don't know anything. I'm flailing a lot more. That's interesting.
I Benjamin Buttoned you, basically, is what happened. But the other interesting thing that I noticed, which is going to really be a nice segue or transition, as they call it in the industry, to the next subject, is that if you were to watch pretty much anybody over the course of a 20, 30, 40-year career, you're going to see a huge evolution. You're going to see their earlier stuff and going to be like, yeah, they were kind of still trying to figure it out. They hadn't found their voice or whatever. You go to your first special, you watch that with your last special that I just saw 2 weeks ago. Right. There's no difference.
So like I've not gotten better at all, is what you're saying.
No, you suck equally as much between special 1 and special 10.
Because I'm like Tony's on Sunday.
Yeah, like when is this guy ever going to get better at his craft, right? But obviously it was the opposite. But one of the things that I admire about you is, number one, your output and your consistency, but the fact that it's always consistently at a high quality. And again, that doesn't happen by accident. We've talked about process a little bit on Sundays before, but I want to know, how is it that you are so consistently working at a high level and have done so for essentially 40 years?
It's weird because it wasn't always like that. When I started comedy, my entire thing was to be Bill Cosby, who was one of my heroes until he became super rapey. So I wrote stories. I have old video. We're going to put it up. Actually, we're going to kind of cut together a compilation of how horrible I was when I started. But it was all energy and there was no substance. And I started to hate myself. I was 12 years in. I was headlining clubs and local B clubs and stuff. And I was making more money than my dad made, which wasn't a whole lot. But I was doing okay. And I started to really hate myself. And here's why I started to hate myself. I started to hate myself because I realized what I was doing on stage had no value to it. It was just, now laughter's value. People say, oh, you're making people laugh. It's value. Yeah, but I was doing it with tricks and devices. And there was no Carlin insight. There was no Robin Williams insight. There was no, there was nothing in it that people could take away. And I saw Lily Tomlin do Signs of Intelligent Life years and years ago when she was first working on it. It's this one-person show where she plays like 10 characters in it, but holy crap, man. My manager at the time made me go watch it, and I watched it, and I was like, I don't know, maybe 20, 21 at the time. And it was in San Francisco at the Great American Music Hall, and I watched it. And at one point, Lily Tomlin is doing 4 characters at one time, having a conversation, a very funny conversation. And she was so good at it that I saw every character as she was switching characters. And then being a performer, I realized, holy shit, she's doing 4 people at one time having a conversation, and I didn't. And I saw the 4 people. I didn't see one person doing it. And that's when I realized I needed to quit comedy and never do comedy again, because there's no way I was going to be that good. And I'm still not that good. So I walked out that day with a different mindset of comedy. And I started doing these bits. I did a bit about when Reagan was later in Reagan, at the end of Reagan's presidency, about Russia. This Russian guy comes to America and he tries to buy a Playboy magazine, but the Mormons had just bought a 7-Eleven, so he couldn't get a Playboy at 7-Eleven. So he thought, what's happening to America? We're losing our. And it was this bit where I played this Russian character the entire time. I went way deep into all this other shit because of Robin and Lily Tomlin, but I still was doing club comedy, which is talking, just doing whatever it took to get by. Stories about this. But remember when you were a kid, never go to the store and buy stuff, it was just lame. And then I started to hate it. About 12 years in, I started to hate myself, where I'd be on stage and a bit would come. You, as a comic, you have a list of show. You do a show a certain way, and you have a bit list in your head, or it's on a notepad, and it's on a piece of paper on the stool that you're reading. And I'd see the next thing I had to say, and I said, God, I don't want to go through this again. Jesus, I hate this bit, blah, blah, blah. And I would do it. So I was going to quit. I decided 12 years in that I was going to quit comedy. I'm not doing this anymore. The phrase I use is, I call it growing a tumor on my soul. I just could no longer tolerate my lameness, is what I'll call it, lameness. And so I decided to do something different. I wrote this bit called "We Need Comedy to Get Rid of Our Desire to Kill." I wanted to throw everything I did out and try something. But the bit starts out, comedians hit the stage, Zach, they're like, hey, how you doing? Well, you guys feeling good? Everybody good? Right? So, and that went on everybody. That's how everybody starts every show ever. I walked on stage with this new bit and I went, do you guys even know why you're here? Is it because you like paying $4 for a beer? No, we're here tonight because comedy gets rid of our desire to kill. And the audience, the first thing, you remember, this is when Seinfeld was huge, so no one was banging against this. Hicks, but I remember doing it the first night. I was so scared of doing it. It was so far out of the wheelhouse I'd been working in that I took a buddy from my acting class, and I do this bit where it's the worst. It's in I put it in one of my later specials because when I wrote it, I wasn't good enough to pull it off. And it's this story about the worst day you can possibly have, from driving to work and spilling coffee to having an HR department call you in because a woman at work said you molested her, and to you go to the boss and he starts this conversation with you're not fired, but and while he's ordering a Mercedes on the phone, and at the end of the last piece of the bit, and it's funny all the way through, I'm stabbing him in the chest with a letter opener, screaming, "I just need a good laugh." And then I would go to the audience, and that's why you're here tonight. And the first night I did it, it's about 3.5 minutes long. It was at Igby's, a club that used to be downtown. And I knew, I brought my friend, told my buddy Eric, I said, get me out of here. I said, because they're going to hate me at the end of this bit. So you just need to get me out of there. They went nuts. Zach. They were like, yeah. Well, I don't have anything else to do now. I have this one 3-minute bit. I got to do 15 minutes. And I have to fill 12 minutes, and I don't have anything in that genre. And here's where I learned, and I've told this story before, I learned the most important thing you can ever learn about performing in front of a live audience: authenticity. It was the first time in my career I'd ever been authentic. I was successful at my job, but I was unmemorable. This 3 minutes was the first time I got on stage and was totally 100% entirely authentic. I dropped right back into my old act to get through the next 12 minutes. Because I thought I was going to get booed off. I dropped in for the next 12 minutes, and the audience went dead silent. As I walked out, I was driving home like, wow, I was killing, and then I sucked. And I finally got that. The audience stopped liking me because all of a sudden, I started lying to them. They saw who I was. They saw what I wanted to do. And all of a sudden, I started lying to them. I told them the truth for 3 minutes. Then I lied to them for 12. And they were like, F this guy. And that's what happened. And then that night I went home and I threw out 12 years of comedy, threw it out. And I started from scratch. And that's where Norman Rockwell's Bleeding came from.
Absolutely amazing story. I had no idea about any of that. I thought that I knew a lot about you. That part I didn't know. So
Yeah.
that to me is absolutely fascinating, which is going to lead into so many other things I want to talk about. One of which is the name of one of your specials, but we're going to go a lot deeper. It's the idea of the voices in your head.
Right.
Something that I talk about with creatives all the time on this podcast is failure and imposter syndrome. And you went in that one little bit, went through a massive case of imposter syndrome. Why am I doing this? I'm a total fake. And there's no question that in my mind, one of the reasons that I think you are so successful and the reason I gravitated to your stuff is I don't feel like I'm watching a stand-up comedian. I feel like I'm watching a human talk about their story very honestly. And it's just funny as shit when you do it. Like watching most comedians, I don't feel like I know them, right? I watch Sebastian Maniscalco. I don't know who he is. You know, he's goofy and he's got fun comedy and whatnot, but there's no connection there, right? With you, there's this connection because you feel very real. And it's like, man, this guy's gone through some stuff, right? And that's what you feel. And I didn't even know that there was a version of you that, you know, those basically, like, isn't it crazy when you go to the dry cleaners? Like, right? Like, I can't even imagine you being that comedian.
We wanted to do like a me. I think we're gonna do a review video of it on YouTube where I watch me being me way back when I was 20, and I think I'm just gonna sit here and just review me, like as the guy I am now, review that guy. I think it's gonna be really funny. Anyway, so yeah, the voice in my head. So I did a thing called the Landmark Forum. A buddy of mine is a doctor, a holistic doctor, NUCA doctor. It's a specific kind of chiropractic that's very exact. They don't guess. That's because chiropractors, they guess. They snap you around and pray you go back to innate center. But as my buddy says, if that was the case, the accident would have fixed you. When I got that, I was like, oh shit, I didn't think about that. So they do. NUCA is very specific. It's been on triple blind studies. It's just the best thing. It saved my life. I used to have dark circles. I had horrible sciatica. It's all gone. That being said, so he kept telling me, you got to do this thing called the Landmark Forum. I looked it up. It was based in Est in the 70s. Then it changed to the Landmark Forum. And then the guy that invented it somehow was friends with the guy from Scientology. And I'm a comedian and I'm very cynical. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to go sell flowers in the airport. I am not going to drink the Kool-Aid. But my buddy, who's really enlightened, I call him my crazy friend, Marshall, he's so enlightened and he would just have these solutions. Well, although I wouldn't take the course, every time something went wrong in my life, I would call him. like I would go, what do I do here? And he would tell me, he'd go, well, here's what I think you should do. And he goes, you know, you got to look at your future and blah, blah, blah. Why don't you just take the course? I'm not doing it. I'll call you later. Then I get in a fight with my dad. A fist fight with my dad. And I call Marshall and be like, dude, I got in a fist fight with my dad. We're screaming at each other. He would talk me through it and go, why don't you take the course? Shut up. So I wouldn't take this course. I wouldn't. And you can look it up, Landmark Forum. It's life transforming for me. So finally what happened was I was doing well in LA. I mean, well is such a relative term in LA. There's so many levels of well. I had a good agent. I had made it to the final leads on 6 different pilots. One pilot season. I got to the final audition, me and the last guy. It was between him and I. And I got there, and in the middle of those auditions, I was fine up to the final audition when I realized it was all on the line. And all of a sudden, in my head, you're a DF student, you're a fucking failure, you've never done anything with your life. Why are you even here? You don't even know what you're doing. What are you doing? You fumbled, you faked your way to here, and now you're going to fail again. And that happened 6 times, and I lost every audition. And I went home after the 6th one, 6th or 7th one. Pilot, my agent calls. He goes, they called and said, you didn't get it. But don't worry, next pilot season, we'll be here soon enough. And I went home, and I was like, I got to change something, man. I have to. This is not working. So I called the forum. I signed up. And then I made the mistake of signing up my wife, who's now my ex-wife. She was so mad at me. I didn't want to do it by myself. And I signed up and I took the course. Then I took the advanced course. And within 2 years after that course, I had a deal for my own television show where I was executive producer and writer, and that ended up being Titus. And all it did was, it doesn't give you anything. It doesn't, it's really a course about self-examination where you clear your past, anything that's holding you back from the past. And then the advanced course sets your future, where you get to pick your future. Whatever you want to happen in life can happen. I'm a DF student with nothing on paper says I should be successful. Within 3 years after I took the advanced course, not only did I have my own television show, but I got a Writers Guild nomination for an episode that I wrote, and we got beat by Everybody Loves Raymond, but that's impossible. There's nothing. So when everybody says I can't do it because, yeah, shut up, because I did. I did, and now I've written and directed my own movie. It teaches you to get rid of all your barriers went away. All my barriers, I don't have barriers, and that's why I think Tony's is easier for me, because I know I accept. Okay, as I said years ago, it's an Edison quote. I never fail. I succeed at finding what doesn't work. It's just a modification of that, and that's what the forum taught me. And I started a charity out of that, and all it really gave me was the ability to be fearless, and that's what Tony's does too at that on Ninja Sunday. People, we're gonna die one day. It's all gonna go away. As I say in my new show, we're all gonna lose. What are you scared of? Failure? No, no one's going to care anyway. No one else except you cares now. What are you worried about? Fearlessness, and if you fail, you just found out what didn't work. You actually got better. Anyway, that's how I try to live anyway.
Well, I absolutely love that. One of the things that I want to dig into even a little bit deeper, and this is something that I teach all of my students, especially the ones that come for the career side of things, looking for the next gig. Can you take a look at my resume, or help me with an outreach email? I think that it's all about the strategy, and the strategy is important, but they don't understand the mindset component. And what I always tell them, it doesn't matter if they say, I'm hoping to be a director someday, or I'm hoping to go from assistant editor to editor, or be a composer. And I say, enough of all that hope crap. Do you believe that you are that thing? Well, no, not yet. Like, till you believe it, nobody else is going to believe it, right? So you can say, I want to be a director, and then you expect somebody to hire you as a director, then you become one. It doesn't work that way. You have to believe you are the thing first until other people believe you are the thing, and you're getting to second to the top chair on a pilot, but in your head, you're like, I'm not the lead of a pilot. Are you crazy?
Right.
Guess what? They knew that too, because you knew it already.
Right. I told them. I didn't say the words, but I came into the room with it. This guy's not a star. This guy's not the lead.
Or maybe you were talking out loud.
You're 100% right. That's 100%.
Maybe you actually walked into the room in your final audition. All right, so I'm a DF student. I have no business. Oh wait, am I saying all this out loud? Oh shit.
Yeah. Well, interesting. You just said you'd crystallize it. That's exactly what happened. So what happens after I did the forum, I did the advanced course. I turned to the forum leader, a guy named Jerry. I'll never forget him. And I go, because they make you sit down, and they don't coach you. You design your future. They just coach you on. They don't pick it. They don't tell you do this well. That you just sit down. What's your impossible? And I sat down, and it was my own television show that I write and produce. So, and I came up with Titus. The idea was I want to create a show that causes a paradigm shift in the way people see their dysfunctional lives, not as a failure, but as a success. And so I had this insight like a bolt from lightning, and I went up to Jerry and I go, Jerry, I'm going to create a TV show that's going to cause a paradigm shift, and I do the whole thing, and he goes, great, and then he just walked away because he didn't care. That's what's great about the course. They don't care, and then I did it, and I knew I was going to do it. Because I'd cleared my past, all the bullshit with my dad and my mom and being a loser and a DF student, because I really cleared that. I don't carry it around as baggage. I use it for jokes now. Because I cleared it, it was so easy to step into a new future and decide I was that guy. And I don't mean I chose. I am and then 3 years later, I had a Writers Guild nomination without going to college. So you're right, dude. You have to decide this is who you are. And it's not a trick. That's the part. People, you can say it. And the more you say it, the more it will become real. But it's not a trick. You can't just, you have to figure out what you do well. I'm really good at stories. I'm really good at insight into stuff. I'm good at taking what everybody believes is one way and flipping it. I'm good at that. So that's where I wanted to go. If you ask me, math, give me a math job, I'm pretty much going to get fired.
Well, you were a DF student after all, right? So yeah, of course you're going to. So one of the things that
eventually I'd figure out math. Sure, if I was like, what I want to be, a mathematician, I would figure it out.
You figure it out because you're a smart guy. It's just not one of your strengths, but you're still obviously incredibly intelligent. It's just not an area that you have enough desire to get good at it. Right, there's a difference.
That's part of it. That's my daughter's a musician now. Her name's Kenny. We named her after my dad, but it's Keni, and she's a musician and she writes songs. At 12 years old, she was writing songs, and I'm like, what are you doing? she's spitting out songs like all the time. And I told her, she came to me and she wanted to have lunch, and divorce was bad, and I didn't see her that often. And she said, I said, what are you doing with college? She's getting high, and she goes, I want to play music. And I knew it was a trick because I'm a comedian, and she knew that asking me, I can't say you have to go to college. I was like, yeah, I guess you can do what you want. And now she's making money doing that. But she believed she's a musician. She knows that's who she is. I know, but I didn't. So many people, I don't understand. You said as you're told as a child, you're a failure. You're not doing it right. You're a loser. That little voice in your head, we're back to that now, becomes that voice in your head, people, that you're hearing is not you. It's everybody you were raised by, everybody in your life who told you you're going to fail, you're not going to make it, you can't do this, you're not good enough for this, you screwed that up, you broke that, you spilled that. That voice is not you. It sounds like you because it's in your head, but it's just an implant from all the people that weren't real positive in your life. And once you recognize that and separate that voice from you, you can tell that voice to shut up. I just go, shut up. That voice pops up once in a while. And I'm just like, yeah. Thanks for sharing. You're out. And it's gone. But just know when you hear that voice in your head tell you how bad you suck, it ain't you. It's a parent that is no longer around. It's a friend that screwed you over. It's a relationship that made you feel like it ain't you. And just be clear about that.
Yeah, one of the biggest kind of eye-opening moments that I had, very similar to this in all the personal development work and psychology. I mean, I'm absolutely obsessed with all this stuff as much as I am obsessed with ninja and everything else. I'm not so good with hobbies. I have obsessions, and this is definitely one of mine. And several years ago, going through this process, I was talking to somebody about all the things that I was experiencing and dealing with, and they asked me a question that totally threw me off. When I was talking about the things that were in my head, they said, "Whose voice is it?" And I'm like, that's a dumb question. It's my voice. She's like, no, give the voice a name. What?
That's a good point.
The voice isn't me. And all of a sudden, like this, I'm like, oh my God, I know whose name this is. I knew exactly who the voice was. That's when it shifted for me. Because now I can say, shut up. Like, stop talking. Right? Because it's not me. It's that other person's voice. And I sometimes have that person's voice in my head. The one that's in my head all the time now, and you can probably attest to this, is Tony's.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Saturday afternoon, you get the email, and you're just like, and I can't use 90% of the words that he would probably use to get us to show up because, we want to keep this as clean as possible and not offend anybody.
Right.
But at the end of the day, that's a voice that I now have in my head, 90% of which is positive, 10% of which, can, kind of noodle you and, kind of, give you the poke in the ribs that you need. But what I learned is that you're never going to be able to get rid of the voices, whether it's your own, whether it's other people's. You just got to get really good at replacing those voices with other people's voices that give you the belief and the confidence that you can do certain things.
And they quiet down. Those voices don't like to know that you know that it's not you. Those voices don't like to know, and they keep popping up. It's mine is based in mostly my dad, and I got to be honest. And so many people told me that because my mom was crazy, I was going to be crazy. And whether that's true or not, I've at least channeled it in a decent way. But those voices don't like to be recognized as not being you. They want those voices want. We're talking like we're schizophrenics right now. Those voices want you to not notice that it's not you, but it ain't you. It ain't you. Giving a name's a great idea. That's a great idea because then that time it jumps in. I'm doing that. That's a helpful because by the way, you can't kill them. You notice you can't kill them. They get quieter and they don't show up as much. But in a moment of stress, in a moment where you need to really show up, and I will tell you this: we had one shot. That special you came and saw. We had one shot at it, because I picked the weekend to film it. The same weekend that Netflix did their Netflix comedy extravaganza, where Gabriel was doing Dodger Stadium and Patton was playing a theater and Bill Burr was doing it. So everybody who's great in comedy was in LA that weekend. And my manager said, "You're not going to sell a ticket to this." And I said, "No, we're going to." I go, "We'll fill it up." He goes, "I'm telling you, people, they're going to go see those guys." And we had a pack show. We just didn't have two, so I had one shot. And I was backstage, and here's the difference between who I was back then, fearful, worried, with hearing the voice as my own, to who I am now. My producer's freaking out. the crew's freaking out, my sound guy's freaking out, and my wife, who's the line producer and the executive producer, is freaking out, and because nothing was working. And I said, guys, everybody calm down. Listen, if we horribly fail at this and it sucks, we had a very expensive rehearsal. And everybody just looked at me and went, oh. So because I reframed it, because I wasn't afraid of what was going to happen, I just reframed it for everybody. All of a sudden, and that sometimes is, and I don't want to say leadership, but sometimes if you can just eat, whether it's your goals, somebody's goals, or a group goal, when the stress hits, try to reframe it in a way that, because you're going to do the same thing anyway. You can actually operate out of full stress, operate out of failure. If you're imagining failure, I guarantee you there's a bigger percentage you're going to hit failure than if you're not thinking about failure. Or if you just accept that, hey, this is going to fail, let's have fun while we're failing. All of a sudden, all the pressure goes off. One more story about this, and I'll move on. What I learned. My wife is a comedian too. She used to run comedy clubs. We got together. She started giving me jokes. She'd come see one of my shows and be like, "What if you said this?" And damn it, the jokes were funnier than some of the shit I could write. And I was getting mad. I was furious. I was like, "Don't you help me? I'm the pro. I don't need." And so she kept doing it. And I was using her jokes. So, there's a couple of jokes I used that were killing. And there's one in this new show that she gave me right before. And so I finally said, you need to be a comedian. She'd booked comedy for 6 years. And she goes, I don't want to be a comedian. I said, no. I said, yeah, you do, because you keep giving me jokes. You keep coming up with funny. You may not see because she had her voice in her head. And I said, you don't see it, but I see it. So she spent a year and she wrote a show and she wouldn't get on stage because that voice in her head knew she was going to fail. And so I went and I signed her up for a comedy competition without telling her. And I signed her up for a comedy competition, and I came home and I said, I signed you up for this comedy competition at the Ice House. And Zack, she flipped out on me. She was like, you don't tell me, and I run my life, and I'll when I'm good and ready. And then she said, when is it? And I was like, She came in second.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
and she's hilarious, by the way. So anybody that wants to go down the Titus rabbit hole, they should be going down the Ray rabbit hole afterwards, because she's
sometimes
phenomenal.
The people, it's weird how sometimes the people that are the most positive in your life, they're trying to help you get everything you want. It's not because they're trying to pump you up. It's because they can actually see what you can't. So sometimes, for a long time, I listened to the insults, or I listened to the dismissiveness of people towards what I wanted to do, and didn't listen to the people that said, yeah, you should definitely do that. Because all of a sudden that voice tells you those people are crazy, but those people are the ones that see you for who you really are. And they care enough about you. So you also have to listen to people in your life, man. You got to listen to people in your life.
So given everything we've talked about so far, you certainly sound very successful to me, and I don't know why I keep bringing up failure. What I'd love to talk about now a little bit more, and you allude to it in your special, but because we're all, talking about the industry and how the industry works, what in the world happened to your sitcom?
Okay. So I took I would say a success and money is probably the worst drug in the world. Success does two things. Success, aside from money, does two things, especially fame. It makes everybody around you kiss your ass. It makes everybody around you all of a sudden either afraid to tell you, or they still want to be connected to it, so they just get really like, you're great, you're awesome. Well, when you hear that long enough, you're a genius. The comedy's genius. Oh my God, you got a Writers Guild nomination. You don't even go to college. You're a genius. You start to think you're right all the time. So I was in a meeting. At Titus, we had three. So Titus was killing. We kind of broke the mold of the sitcom a bit. Us and Malcolm in the Middle, because I hated sitcoms. And when I came with the idea for Titus, I didn't want to do a sitcom. And George Burns years ago had done this one where he would turn to the camera and talk, and I thought, we're stealing that. And I had to fight the network on the black and white. I had to fight the network on the flashbacks. But it was a constant fight. And in fact, it was such a fight, but the script was so funny that myself, Jack Kenny, and Brian Hargrove had written, that the network couldn't deny the script was funny. It was such a weird thing. They're like, we think this is funny, and we know it won't work. That's pretty much what we were told at more than one meeting. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you a pilot and a very little bit of money. And and here's what else I've learned in life. When you think everything's going wrong, that's the way it's supposed to go. And how do I know that? Because that's the way it went. When you think it's all wrong, when all these goals that you set didn't happen and these other goals happened, sometimes getting a bad answer is exactly what you needed. You just have to kind of it's faith in the universe, man. So they give us a little bit of money. We cast the show. We get it done. A day before we're filming, and the run through before we shot the pilot, the network comes to us and says, we don't like Cynthia Watros. We don't think she's funny, and we're going to recast. And so Jack, Brian, and I had a meeting, and Brian, very smart, Brian Hargrove, very smart man, says, it's not her, it's us. And I looked at him, and he goes, we wrote it wrong. So the three of us and the writers got into a room, and we rewrote her entire character because we had made her this kind of ditzy, kind of funny, and she wasn't. She's wicked smart, and she could, and it, for whatever reason, it just wasn't. Again, we're back to authenticity now. What we didn't write her as who she was, so we switched it and wrote her as a snarky, no bullshit, cut to the bone person, and her opening monologue killed. We went from, and she learned it in one day, came in and blew the roof off. So because they said we're going to recast, and we had to go rewrite, and we did, and we fixed it. So the bad news was actually the best news we could possibly get. Then what happened was the other bad news we got. We finished the pilot. It did well. And they said, we're going to put you on the fall season. And we were so excited. 2 weeks before they announced the schedule, they called us and they said, we're not putting you on the fall season. We're moving you to mid-season. Now, mid-season, if people know, that's when they put shows they don't think is going to do well, and they hide them later on. That's changed, but at that time, it was like that. So we realized they don't think we're going to fit. They put Malcolm in the Middle on instead. And I was so pissed, man. I was so angry. And what happened was that was the year that of the 16 shows that Fox put up in the new season, within 3 weeks, 13 of them were canceled. It was a bloodbath, man. They just 13 shows canceled. So when the mid season came up in March, we were put on, I think March 16th or whatever. We were the golden child. They were like, you're not going to believe this show. So those two horrible disappointments, made us get better, and were actually the exact right thing. So then 3 years in, show's doing well. I'm killing myself. I'm writing till midnight with the writer's room, and then I'm going down. I'm just giving you the excuses of why what happened. But the reality is I just should have shut the fuck up. Excuse my language. Sorry, I think we're at Tony's sometimes when I'm hanging out with you. So we had a meeting at the network. We had 3 presidents in 3 years, 3 different presidents. Doug Herzog, who was awesome. Doug Herzog's a great executive. He's one of the, remember I said early on, there was 4 or 5 people that I really think are super creative and they get it. Doug Herzog is one of them. He's this guy. And then he ran Comedy Central after Fox. He was president of Fox time. And he would be like, if it was working, he'd be like, keep doing what you're doing. It's great. That's all he would say. He understood creativity. He understood that the artists seem to have a handle on what's going on. Every week they're turning out quality. Every week they're doing their job. Let it go. Because so many executives want to pee on it. They just want to pee on it. They don't care. They don't care what you know to work. And I've been doing comedy at that time 20 years almost. They don't care that you know. They want to be part of it. So they're going to pee on it, even if they don't know. Doug is one of those executives smart enough to be creative and know when he doesn't know. Killer. Then we had another guy, Sandy Grushaw, came in. Sandy Grushaw had been running 20th Television. Sandy was one of these guys that was more worried about power than doing a great job, in my opinion. And he didn't get it. He didn't get it. So we got through that year. Then we had Gail Berman. Gail Berman came in. She was head of Regency who had done Malcolm in the Middle. And Gail Berman was a creative, very, again, in my opinion, high school issues, a lot of stuff that came up with Gail. You want to talk about someone who had a voice in her head? I believe Gail did. My opinion, again, Gail, if you're watching, I love you. It's great. You won. You canceled the show. We're good. So we'll get to integrity, too. There's one more story I want to tell. And you can tell me to shut up when you want me to. So what happens is this. We have a meeting in the 3rd season. Gail's the new president, sits down at the meeting, and she says, all right, the show's going well. It's doing great. We're really going to do a big push this next year. Me, Jack, and Brian are there, and they go, She goes, I want you to split the Chris and Aaron up and have them cheat on each other. Well, two things came up for me instantly. I also am a comedian, and you see me at Tony's. I just say what I say. I just, I'm just, if it comes up, it comes out of my mouth because I don't have a filter. Because my job is to not have a filter. My job is to get on stage, say what comes up. So instantly I think, well, we already did that episode 4, we cheated on each other. And that was, and she goes, no, I want to do an arc with like 3 or 4 different episodes where you guys have a love triangle. And and here's the problem with it. I know, and I think I'm a smart enough guy. What's the one with the hippie and the hippie and the yuppie at the time? You know what I'm talking about. There was another show they were doing, Dharma and Greg.
Oh, right.
And the whole thing with Dharma and Greg was Dharma and Greg had cheated on each other. Kevin Sorbo had come into the picture, and then they had she was sleeping with Kevin Sorbo, then she went back. Well, what you can't do in television, what you can't do in storytelling is you can't set up a premise and then blow the premise out of the water. The whole premise of Dharma and Greg was the hippie and the yuppie. I mean, the hippie and the yuppie can be together, and nothing can break them apart. Well, if you break them apart, you've killed the series. Well, Titus was based on the fact that 2 dysfunctional people together create a strong enough bond with their dysfunction that you can't break them up. They will be loyal to each other. And if you split them up, then I've just lied to the audience. Titus was for all these screwed up people who don't think they fit in. And I proved to them that no, not only do you fit in better because you can handle shit that no one else can handle because they haven't been through it. So I said, all right, here's where everything goes sideways. There's 20, 30 people at this table. It's this giant conference room outside of Rupert Murdoch's office at the top of Fox. Gail Berman's sitting across from me. Jack and Brian are next to me. And there's literally maybe another 22 executives around this huge table. And she finishes. She goes, I want you to split them up. I want you to have a love triangle and blah, 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 blah. And I said, oh God, I've told this story, but I hate telling it because it's the one regret I think I have in my life. Real regret. I look at the network president and I say, do you even watch the show? and I go, because here's how this works. I go, I told her all. I go, we have a couple that the entire premise of the show is based on dysfunctionality is powerful, and these 2 people together, you can't break them up. If I break them up and she leaves him, I've blown the entire thing. I go, we lose the whole audience. We've lied to them from the first episode, so we're not doing it. That's what to the network president in front of everybody that she's new to, and she works, and all these people work for her. I was waiting, and I think I did it in the bit. I was waiting for a William Wallace moment where, I was like, freedom, thinking that everyone was going to go, yeah, good, tell the network president. And it got quiet, dude. It got so quiet. And Jack and Brian, my co-execs, they as I said later, just stick me in the neck with a pencil. Shut me up before I get the sentence out. I'm fine with that. I know what you're doing now. I have wisdom now. The network president sits there after I finished this little bit. It wasn't even tired. I didn't swear at her. I just kind of explained why it won't work. I guess I did it with some strident tones.
I can see that coming from you. I can perhaps see some edge.
So so the network president, Gail Berman, sits back and she's sitting in her chair and she just nods her head and this is the coldest moment in show business, dude. She goes, fine, do what you want. And doesn't break my gaze, dude. and it felt like, I said it in the bit, I go, it was like a tumbleweed blew across and the thermostat lowered itself and I heard Clint Eastwood's voice, well, you really that up, didn't you? So, and that was the moment. The next day, literally the next week, the next Monday, all promo for Titus stopped. Every piece of advertising stopped. Bernie Mac kind of took our idea for the show. They even said that. They called it an homage to Titus. Bernie Mac was getting promoted. We were following him half an hour later. And the only promo we got after I did that stupid shit was a tiny little chyron at the bottom of the screen that said, Titus at 9:30. All it said. Problem is they moved us again. Ratings went down, and they came back up because people found us. They didn't even announce they were moving us. They just did it. And then the ratings came back up again. And I'm going to tell you my last regret. That's my second regret. I have 2 regrets in show business. I get a call from the president of the studio of 20th Television, and she goes, "You need to go to a meeting with Gail Berman, and you need to kiss her ass. You tell her whatever she needs to hear." And if you know me at all, and you know me a little bit, that's not the best thing to do, because what it does is it gets rid of. There's a way to totally tell people exactly what you think without disrespecting them, and I hadn't done that yet. I did well. I have done that with everybody else, the crew and everybody else, but I always saw the network as an enemy. And just so you guys know, if the network has given you money, even if they're being a pain in the ass, even if they're saying we need you to change this, we don't like this, they're just covering their ass. They're trying to figure out how to keep your show on the air. They really are. So you should. But I never heard it that way. Again, I didn't choose to hear "we're trying to help you." I choose "we're trying to ruin you." And it's exactly the same sentence they were giving me. So it was, I totally take responsibility. This was my fault. I go to lunch with the president of the network, and she said, and dude, I've never done this before. Since I sat there and I told her everything she wanted to hear, and I felt like I slimed myself. I was sitting there, and I was like, "If you want us to have a baby, we'll have a baby, and we'll do it." Da, 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 da. And I walked out of there feeling like, oh, I needed a shower. And what I should have said is this. I look back on this day. This is the key to me not having this weird emotional tumor that I'll never get rid of. I should have said, "Hey, I'm really sorry what I said at that meeting. I should have taken responsibility." I take responsibility for what I said. It was out of line. And I go, but the reality is this. We are giving you a laugh out loud funny show every week, and I promise to keep doing that. And we will take your ideas, we'll run them through, and if we can make them work, we will. But I want you to know I'm apologizing for what I did, and we're going to keep doing the show we're doing. If you want to cancel it, that's on you. It's not on me. But I promise you, I will do my job for you and what you're paying me for. Thank you for lunch. And then I should have walked out. At least I'd have walked out with my soul. I probably could have adjusted it, make it a little nicer, but that's about what I should have done. So you have to be careful, man. Show business, and that's what I mean about fame and money, is that show business and success can make you give up you, and you don't have to. I mean, if you look at the best artists of all time, Springsteen, Prince, they never gave themselves up for it, and they became monsters. So next time you're thinking, oh, if I just did this, it'll be okay. Little things, yeah, but I gave up pretty much everything I believed in at that lunch, and she still canceled the show. So I got my soul destroyed, and I lost the show.
One of the things that I told myself, having come from a very, very small rural farming community in northern Wisconsin, as far away as possible from LA, the joke that I always tell people is that when I travel back home, I need a passport because it's like going to a foreign country. Totally different world. But I remember, and I don't know exactly when I told myself, and I had these, water rose-colored pictures in my mind of how all of this went down. It probably didn't. But at least the image in my mind is as I'm driving across the country, I've got 2.5 days to go from Wisconsin to LA. I've got my first job on Monday. It's all starting. I remember telling myself at one point, I'm done as soon as the business changes me. I can't let the business change me, at least for the worse. I can't let the business tell me who I'm going to be. Now, I'm a very different person now than I was when I was 22 years old driving out here. But at the same time, if anything, I've learned things and I feel that I've become a better person, but I didn't become the person the industry wanted me to become. But oh man, were there opportunities. There's always opportunities because like you said, success is the worst drug ever, right? And I would say that a regular paycheck is pretty close as well, because a paycheck keeps you from your own dreams so you can help somebody else achieve their dreams.
Yeah, interesting. I see that with you. I see with you get a job that you're kind of, and it's weird. You were in you're on a killer show. You're doing an amazing job. I love the show you were editing it, and it's interesting how that can do it too. That's what happened with comedy a little bit. What you just said is really interesting because it's not just success with money. There's a couple of comedians that I know that have gotten very, 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 very hugely successful, and who I knew them to be is not who they are on their current media platforms. And what I noticed over the years, what happened was as they got bigger with a certain segment of the population, that instead of them pulling their audience to a better place, what they did was they let their audience pull them to a worse place. And it has kicked back on them a couple of times. Nationally, it's kicked back on them hard. And I just decided never to do that. So, and someone told me once a long time ago, they were like, I got to be in LA. I got to be in LA. I got to go to my commercial auditions. And it was a whole bunch of comics I was hanging out with were talking like this. And I decided years ago, I am never going to stop doing stand-up comedy because I never am going to be actor meat. I'm never going to be someone who's desperate for someone to say yes. I will create it myself. I'll do it on my own. And even if it isn't success and I just squeak by, my soul is clean. My soul is healthy. And my creativity is alive. And so that's an interesting thing about that paycheck. Because at one point, was there a point for you where you were like, wow, I'm really done with this. I don't want to do this anymore. I've done it well. I'm going to move to the next thing.
Yeah, I've had a couple of those points. I would say that I had one, and I've told my story about this ad nauseum to my audience over and over and over. So I'll keep it super short, but you probably haven't heard it. But it was when I was working on season 1 of Empire. Right. And if you remember, season 1 of Empire, global phenomenon, like breaking decades of ratings records. It was on the cover of every single magazine and TV shows everywhere. And I'm at the epicenter of all of it. Like I'm down the hall from Lee Daniels and Danny Strong, and I'm like right in it. And it's like, when did this happen? I went from doing like cable shows to being in the middle of this zeitgeist. And at the same time, I was putting my kids to bed via FaceTime every single night.
Wow.
Right. And what happened one night, and again, a lot of my audience has heard this, but for anybody new, essentially what happened is I was putting my kids to bed via FaceTime. My wife was there. She thought she had hung up and she hadn't. And my son, who was about 5 at the time, said to my wife, "Why doesn't Daddy want to put us to bed at night? Why doesn't he love us?" I was 2 weeks away from whatever I was editing in that room at that time being seen by 25 million people. And that was my reward. And I said, all right, I'm out. I'm done. I got to figure something else out. And from that point, like you said, I designed a way out. Right. I had never done anything else in my life. And my identity was, I am an editor. It's how I support myself. It's how I make a living. It's the path. It was the path I designed, and I had the next 30 years charted out. And I thought, oh, I don't want to be on this path anymore. And that was terrifying. I had a massive identity crisis. But I just started designing, what does it look like? What else can I bring to the world? What value can I bring? And it took a while to figure it out. But as I started to package it and noodle and do a lot of failure along the way, I figured out, like you had said at the beginning, I love how you crystallize it, where you didn't say, well, I'm good at comedy. You said, what I'm really good at is taking an idea and pulling somebody along the way and then flipping it on them. And then it causes them to look at themselves and learn something or think a different way. It's almost like comedy inception is what you do, right?
Yeah.
And what I realized, and it took me a long time to realize this, is that what I am exceptional at is taking gigantic amounts of random information and distilling it into a very simple to understand package. There's been more than once, even during the show, you're like, yeah, that's actually a really good, simple way to put it. Right. I don't know how I do it, but I can do that. And once I figured out that's not just about being a good editor where I get 100 hours of footage and I turn it into 40 minutes, I can do it with anything. So I thought, what if I can help do that with other people's lives? Let's take all the random stuff, all the things you want to do, all of your goals, all of the voices in your head. Let's package it down, and I can help other people design what that path looks like. And I realized I'm not starting with 0 experience. I've actually got 20 years of experience. And as somebody that's in production and in post-production and everything else, you've done it all. You know that essentially the editor is not just somebody that bangs away on a keyboard. They're the local therapist for the entire production crew. Like, how many times have you gone into an edit suite and you collapse on the couch and you're like, oh, this business, these producers, right? And the editor slowly walks you off the ledge, at least the good ones, right? So I realized I can take 20 years of that experience and just take it into a slightly different version of the industry. But it took a long time to find that.
It's interesting. You're still an editor. You're still an editor because editors are. You're a guy. Yeah. Because here's the problem is that I didn't even know how your mind deals with it. When we shoot stuff, and like you said, you're gathering up all this positive information about life and how to organize the stuff and doing. That's exactly what you're still being an editor. You're just doing it in a different medium. But editors are like the guys like we shoot 6 cameras or whatever, and then I'm like we're And the editor goes, no, we're not. Watch. Click, 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 click. Oh my God, we cut that whole piece out. No one even knows we cut that out. Yes. So you get, yeah. And if you can do that and you can make the journey to success shorter, that's what I think you're doing. You're making the journey to success for people shorter by doing this.
Yeah. And the other component, which goes back to the voices, is
Yeah.
that I help people believe they can do it.
Right.
Because I can give them all the strategies and I can tell them, we'll do this tomorrow, do this on Wednesday, do this a month from now. Nobody's going to do it if they don't believe they can. Right. So it's got to be those two components together.
And the interesting thing, people, is this, and what he's saying is dead right. The interesting thing is, as your successes mount, and this is going to sound weird, pick something that scares you. Having my own television show, don't pick something that you know you can accomplish, because it's not going to change. It's not going to rewire your brain. It's not going to rewire you. You're just going to be like, of course, I knew I could do that. Pick something you know you can't do. Pick something you want to do. I call it picking the impossible. Pick the impossible. A DF student getting his own television show and getting a Writers Guild nomination with no college is impossible. So, touring the country, having Bruce Springsteen come up and saying, I watched your show because it was art. Again, that's the same guy. It's fucking impossible. The woman I'm married to, so far out of my league, it's ridiculous. Impossible. So just so you know that you need to pick something that scares you. Zack and I do a thing, a rope, beam. What's the exact name of that?
It's called peg, beam, rope, beam, peg, pull-ups.
Yeah. Okay. So it sucks. It's like everybody. There's guys that have quit coming to Sundays specifically because of this one thing we do. And when I first saw it, I remember looking at it like, I'm gonna try it. I'm with these dudes. I'm gonna do it. But I don't know. I'm gonna drop 18 feet to my death probably, and I still went for it. That's, even though I knew I was gonna fail at it, I did it anyway, and now I can do it. So you pick something that's impossible, and again, it should scare you. It should, because it's not fear, it's excitement. Because let's say you only get 60% of where you want to be. Well, that's 60% closer than you were before you had the balls to try it again. And that's exactly what happened on when I first did the exercise. I got about 60% there, and now I can get. Now I even did the pegs last time. I'm getting better at it. So now I'm getting to 80, 90%, and I'll do it, but when I first started it, it scared the shit out of me, and now I'm excited about it every time. So pick something impossible, because you can do the impossible. I've proven it.
We're totally on the same page there, and that's something that I tell my students all the time. And along those lines, I actually gave a speech about the same idea, of all places, at Tony Horton's house as the closing speech of his Paragon experience, which goes back to, hey, I know, let's go back 4 or 5 years, fat, bald, out of shape film editor is going to be giving the keynote closing presentation at Tony Horton's Paragon experience. Like, come on, when is that possibly going to happen? But I'm like, you know what? I see that. I watched American Ninja Warrior, over 200 pounds, bowl of popcorn on my fat belly, and mixed into the popcorn was Oreos. I shit you not, I'll never forget this image. Watching the show, I was just binge watching it in the middle of this horrible depression, and I thought, I can do that. I can't do it yet, but I can do that. And that's when it all started. So it's about, you have to see it, then you believe it, then you piece together all the things that you can't do, and eventually you can do them.
And you'll know two things. I find that it has to have two components. It can't be something that you don't care about. It has to be something you actually care about. You obviously cared. Like, I would watch Ninja Warrior and I'm like, holy crap, man. Because they make it look easy. That's the sucky part.
Yeah, tell me about it. Tell me about it.
It's easy. It ain't easy. And then Wesley, you we're around Wesley and you're like, oh, well, I can do, if that guy, no. But pick it. You have to have a passion for it. Pick your passion. And you're going to say, my passion, there's no way to make money in my passion. There's no way to be successful with my passion. I don't know what your passion is, but I guarantee you there's a way to make money and be happy with it. Also, money's another bad drug. It's another bad drug. Elon Musk, perfect example of what a bad drug money is. Especially recently. Just recently, he seems to have gone off the deep. It's just a bad drug. It changes your DNA in some weird way. A certain amount of money is fine to live, and it'd be fine to get success, but there's a level of money that is just a bad drug. You have to have passion, number one. Number two, you have to, again, you have to be scared of what you're trying. So you're imagine you're impossible, have passion for it, and then pick something far beyond what you think you can accomplish. Trust me, you will get so far beyond where you thought you could that it will stun you. It will stun you. And then you'll just see, then all of a sudden, let's say you shot to here and you're like, I just know I'm getting there. Let's say you don't the first time. Say you get to here. Well, then that's only that different. The next time you try it, it's only that far then. And so the next time you do it, you're there. So passion, and then pick something crazy.
Yep, I totally agree with that. Reminds me of probably, maybe not my favorite, but one of my top 3 quotes of all time from James Cameron. You probably know it, which is that if you set ridiculously high goals and you fail, your failures are above everybody else's successes.
Yeah, wow,
right?
I like that a lot. That's perfect. Yes,
it's basically the quote summation of all the stuff that you just said. Was once again lots of information, big story, one sentence.
Yep.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Have you start editing my conversations?
Well, I've edited a conversation or two in my life. So I've got another question for you, and I'm sure that people say this to you flippantly, and it's an actual very genuine question. And I'm going to preface it by saying this. I don't really blow smoke. And if I have somebody on my podcast, I'm of course going to be complimentary. You do great work. I'm a fan of your book or your movie or whatever, right? But I'm not going to be inauthentic.
Right.
I genuinely believe that you are in the same conversation as Carlin and Cosby, the non-rapey version. I genuinely believe you have that level of talent. There are so few people that can do what you do consistently.
By the way, the voice just started going. Just so you know.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I love that you're bringing that up, but that's genuinely that's my view from the outside. And maybe I'm not a professional comedian, but I've been in media for a good portion of my life, and I've watched a lot of comedy. And there are a lot of great people, but I think that there's something very unique that you have, that it's not just comedy, it's not just well written, there's performance to it. There's so many components beyond just I'm a good writer and I'm performing good comedy, right? So here's the question. All was that was a preface to that. Why don't you have a Netflix special?
Remember the story I told earlier about the network president? So here's the one thing about Hollywood, and you probably all know this. When you, because Titus was, I mean, Stacy Keach, it wasn't because of me. It was because of the team we had. The idea was, but we pulled off something pretty groundbreaking at the time, in a sense of sitcoms. And the story is, and I've told the story, I probably added to the legend of it, but I kind of fucked it up. And in a sense that I didn't punch anybody. I didn't do anything crazy. I just, I was very honest with somebody who wielded their power like a weapon, and that was a mistake of mine. My diplomacy was. So over the years, I think that story has gotten around, and people know I'm very specific about what I want. With a Netflix special, all it would take was, here's a Netflix special. But everybody does calculations, man. It's all what's hip in the business, what's new. And I've kind of pulled myself out. Perfect example of what you're saying. There's a couple people in the industry that I know that are really ass kissers. They go everywhere. They talk to everybody. They're nice. They bullshit everybody. And like you said, I can't be inauthentic. I'm diplomatic now. I don't have to say, you suck, but I can be like, yeah, I don't enjoy, yeah, no, you're great. It's great. I can, but I don't like to lie. It makes me icky. So I don't hang out in show business. I have a few show business friends, and they're also people that don't hang out in show business. I have a good friend of mine who's currently on a TV show right now, a national sitcom. He doesn't like show business. He doesn't hang out in show business. He just doesn't. He goes to what he has to. Because I don't do that, I don't have that networking thing. And not only do I not have it, I always think my talent should be enough, or it won't, so I don't have it. A lot of comics have that. I just have never been that guy. Here's a quick story. When I did Star Search, first two, I think I got 3 things in Star Search. I got beat by a guy with a puppet or a guitar or something. And I was killing the first 2. And after the second one, the 2 producers invited me to go hang out with them. They're like, come on, man. Going back to, it was in Orlando at Disney World. We're filming it. And, come on, man, come back to the hotel. We're going to hang out. I get to the hotel. I think we're just gonna have dinner or whatever. And all of a sudden they go, "We're yo man, we got some girls coming over, a bunch of alcohol." And I was like, and I went, yeah. Oh, I said, and here's what I said. I'll never forget it because the looks on their faces, I'll never forget it. I said, oh, so you guys aren't in show business to create good stuff. You're in show business for the girls and the party. And I thought they would laugh. They didn't laugh. And I said, I'm married, guys. I can't be here when a bunch of women are here. I'm gonna go to my hotel. Thanks. And those two guys, those two specific guys, one of them became very high on a network level. The other one is a very, very huge manager right now. And they don't call a lot. And all it does is, so do me a favor. The other thing I would give you is people, you can be authentic, but also have some diplomacy, which I don't have.
Well, you're not supposed to have a filter. That's your job, is to not have a filter.
I know it's my job to not, and then I get in trouble for not, but it's okay. So Netflix special. I'm saying it. My Netflix special is going to happen ASAP.
That was going to be my next question.
Yes.
Do you want a Netflix special?
Who doesn't want a Netflix special? It's a great platform, or an HBO special, or even on Hulu. My stuff's been on. I've had 6 on Comedy Central. My buddy Billy says, you got to stay in the box, Titus. You got to stay in the box. Somehow you got to get in the box. So there's some specific things you have to do in show business to maintain. Like if you don't edit for 10 years and you try to get an editing job, you're not getting an editing job. But if you go, I'm still did it. I edited these 10 things. I'm always writing a new script. I'm always, submitting new stuff. I love the business. I love it. I would love to be on a TV show for the next 4 years, but I'm never going to give up stand-up. Stand-up is where I live. So a Netflix special, more than anything, I would love to have a special where more people. Here's the great thing about television. Like this you saw the new special. You saw us film it.
Yeah, I was there live. By the way, I was sitting next to your manager, which I didn't know. So number one, you must have got me an amazing seat because I'm literally next to your manager. And about halfway through, I'm like, this guy doesn't seem like he's that into it. Because he's probably seen it 20 times. Like, I'm laughing my ass off, and he's like, I'm like, what's this guy's problem? This is hilarious. And then afterwards in the green room, I'm like, oh, that was his manager.
Yeah, no, every moment he's thinking, okay, all right, he didn't fuck that up. Okay, he didn't fuck that up. Okay, he didn't fuck that up. That's the voice in my head. What was that to say? Yeah, so you're sitting there, but thanks for that show. So that show, everybody I've performed that show for already, all the people, all the shows I've done, the year it took me to build that show. Imagine how many audiences, how many packed houses, how many theaters. It's less than like 1% or 2% of what people would see it if you showed it on Netflix. And that, you want to get your message out there. So I would love that. And I've got invited to I'm going to go to the Fringe Festival in Scotland to do my other show, Carrion Monsters, that I wrote during COVID. And I didn't get a chance to figure it out. So I'm taking that to Scotland. And that's real personal. That's not as, like this one, you saw it. It's very kind of socially relevant on what's going on the planet right now. As I called it, a blunt assessment of what's happened in the last 2.5 years. Yeah.
All right. So now I'm going to put you on the hot seat.
Okay.
What's it going to take to get the Netflix special?
Okay, well, I've put those. Okay, so again, people, I know what you're going for. You have to get. It doesn't work by yourself. You have to have a community around you. There's no one on the planet has gotten success by themselves. It just doesn't happen. It may seem like they did. It may seem like certain people. Oh, the guy's so talented. Of course he's successful. No, there's a group of managers or agents or whatever. Or there's someone that either convinced him, promoted him, connected him to somebody else, him or her to somebody else, and that's where they got it. And you can't forget those people. So I have a manager now that is busting his ass. I have agents, and I'm doing everything I can, whether it's the podcast I do or YouTube channel. And there's a number that it doesn't even matter how good it is. There's a number I would get to on YouTube that they would go, let's give him a special. He's got enough audience. It all comes down to that, but you can't do it by yourself. It takes. I always say Hollywood is people go, how do you succeed in Hollywood? I go, you don't leave. That's number one. Everybody who's left failed. I didn't make it. Well, how do you know you didn't make it? Well, nothing happened. I go, how do you know you left? It doesn't count. So Hollywood to me is always, and I've said people when young comics ask me, how do you make it? And I go, well, imagine Hollywood is 100 concentric walls. You're out here. You're banging your head against this wall. And when that wall falls, The wall inside's a little bit nicer, but you still got to keep banging your head against it, and you got to keep banging your head against it, and then it falls, and then you go to the next one. In the middle is Brad Pitt, and or whoever Ryan Reynolds. They're in the center. They're in the center wall. But even though they'll get sent over the wall one day, so you got to keep banging your head, and you got to really appreciate the people that helped you. Titus would not have gotten done without Brian Hargrove and Jack Kenny, Mindy Schulteis. I had an executive that in a meeting at Fox. Before the pilot got approved, they were like, well, it's a little edgy. It's too far for us. This was Fox, by the way. We don't know if we want to do this. And Mindy Schulteis stood up, slammed the script on the table and went, are you out of your fucking mind? Have you read this? This is the funniest thing we have. We don't have a script in the last 10 years that's fucking funny. And the next thing I know, that they approved the pilot. So, and I'll never thank her enough for that. So remember those people that help you. So with Netflix, I'm doing this. I got my manager on it right now. He's going to everybody. I am going to submit the finished special to them. Again, if that doesn't work, we're moving on to Hulu and HBO. But I am on it. And it's happening this year. I've done too many, too long, and it's too damn good.
Yeah, well, I could have said all the same things, but I'm glad to hear that you said it instead.
Yeah, I knew you're trying to get me to get it done. I get it.
That's what I do, right? That's what I want to do. I want to make sure you believe that you can do it. But if you had said, you know what? It's not for me. It's not a world I want to get into anymore. I'd be like, cool. That's a great reason, right? But if it was a matter of, well, I made these mistakes and blah, blah, it's like, dude, part of your past, right? No, you figure it out. Right. You design the path. But the fact that you want to do it gets me very excited because you need one.
And then I got the next one, and then Carrying Monsters is going to be next, and Carlin did 15 specials. The great news is, by the way, two people that want to go, pick your hero and what you want. Figure it out. Who is the best of the best? Who you look up to with your passion? Who did it well? Who did it the best? Don't say I'm going to do it better than him. Do whatever you do. But Carlin did 15 specials, and 21 albums. I'm at 10 right now. And I am never going to be Carlin. I'm going to be me. But that, when you said earlier, why do you keep putting output? Well, my dad was very blue collar, and that's my job. So many comedians for so many years did the same act for a decade, 8 years, 10 years, a decade. They just kept doing it because it worked. And America's big enough where you can tour all these clubs, and it takes, year after year, and it takes 2 years to get through the whole thing. So you're only doing the show 4 times, really, if you think about it. And I just said, I'm never going to do that. I want people to be like, oh, damn, he's not doing the one he did last time. What's the new one? And that's what happened. I designed that. After Titus got canceled, I decided I would never again get comfortable with where I am. And every time that happens, I don't have I have oh, shit, which is probably not healthy either. But there's always more to do. And there's always the next thing to do. And the world keeps getting absurd. Dude, the world is, can you imagine, do you remember that, we had to deal with disco and then music going from, like new wave to Nirvana, like that, that's what we had. That was our big problem. That was our big cultural shift. Can you imagine what we've gone through in the last 8 years? It's insane. It's insane. The swing from black president to the insanity that we've gone through to a once in 100-year pandemic. That's where that bit about in the new show about Gen Z and the millennials came from. Like, I can't imagine going through this as a kid. This is the world? Okay.
And that was one of the things that I loved about going through your stuff in reverse chronological order is I see your latest special where you're apologizing about the participation trophies. And then I go back and rewatch the bit from give or take 10, 12 years ago about participation trophies. And I'm like, it was in Neverlution. Yeah. And I'm like, he has no idea what's coming. Like, it was so much fun to watch it with that perspective.
Yeah, in the past me is really stupid and naive.
Well, isn't that kind of true of all of us, though?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, so speaking of the past, I've got one final question.
By the way, thank you for focusing me on that. Thank you. It's so funny because it hasn't happened in the last 4 or 5 specials, and it's interesting that you just focused me on, I'm getting that.
Yeah, you're going to make it happen. No question.
Yep.
So the last question that I want to ask, because I want to be respectful of your time, which I haven't been because we've been talking flipping forever, but this has been like one of the funnest
You can
conversations
tell
I've ever had.
how I hate to talk. You can tell that
Yeah,
I
I
really
can
hate.
see that you want to make a living not talking and sharing your ideas and your perspectives, right? But I have an exercise. I don't do this with every guest, but I do it when I think it's relevant, that I think it's
Okay.
really relevant in this conversation.
Okay.
So we're going to time travel back in time. And I want you to pick a time where, whether it was when you were 12 years old and ran away from home, or you get the phone call that your mother killed herself, whatever that moment is, where you just kind of feel like it's the lowest of the low, right? Probably not the bonfire, but that can be in the conversation.
Right.
But just kind of pick that moment where you believe in yourself the least, or you don't see the path, or whatever it might be.
Okay.
What's that moment for you right now? It's not the question. I want to set it up for the question. What is that moment
What
that's
is
coming
the
to your
moment?
mind? Yeah, which one are you picking? There's so many. With most people, I know what the moment is, and I say, travel back in time to this moment. With you, you got to pick it.
It was the end of the summer after the bonfire incident. It was the end of that summer, and my dad and I had just had a brutal brawl in the kitchen where chairs were flying and we were punching each other, and like a physical, like a horrible, and I thought, I'm gonna kill him or me, and I started to believe that I may be crazy like my mom. I remember this. This is the end of that summer. The end of the summer, my 17th. Yeah, I was about to turn 18. I was still 17. I remember it. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to time travel back to that moment.
Okay.
What are you going to tell yourself?
And I'm me now.
Yep.
Huh. Um. Why did that just get me? Why did that get me? That really just got me. I would tell him, it's gonna work out, and nothing's that important. It's gonna work out, and nothing's that important. You know. I've written some of this stuff. Give it one more day, and I wrote it in my there's a bit in my sister killed herself, and suicide's become a big thing, and I would tell that kid, it's just give it one more day, every day.
I would say that that's good advice for just about anybody in any context, but I think in that one, I think that's good. And if it makes you feel any better, you're not the only person that I've gotten with that question.
Yeah, you prick.
It's not a gotcha question. I never thought it would be.
No,
but
it's not, though, but-
it's evolved into this thing that's really, it's just, without even really having to say too much, it gets right to the heart of
You
things.
drive people back to a place of their lowest, and it's weird because now that it's so. What I got from it was, I saw that kid and I felt really sorry for him. And what I did after that was, my dad came home and he goes, we had just, it was bad. It was the lowest point of our relationship ever in my life. And he came home and he went, he goes, we're going skiing for the weekend and you're not going. It's one of the things I love more than anything, wakeboarding and skiing. And he's like, you're not going, you're staying home. And I was like, good, I don't fucking want to go with you anyway. And he's like, what? And we were about to go again, and my stepmom got between us and was like, stop. So they left on that Friday, took the boat up, and they left on that Friday. And I packed everything I had in my bedroom, everything. And I shampooed the carpets, and I TSP'd the walls, and I took everything out, and I loaded it, and I called my aunt, and I said, I said, I'm going to kill him or he's going to kill me. And she said, why don't you come live with me then? And I moved. And when my dad came back that Sunday night, it looked like I had never lived there. And that's what I did. You know, I've always been good at, because again, I was raised in chaos. So you can't curl up. You can't get in a fetal position because that's how you die. You get up and you go to the next thing. And again, one more day.
And I think that's the other interesting thing about what you chose to do for a living. And you even have an entire bit about this. So it's not like I'm, pulling this out of thin air. Right. But you allude to the fact, and you're very honest about the fact, that the reason I'm not a serial killer is because I'm a comedian.
True.
Right? Right. And I think that that's not true just for people that have gone through what you have. I think it's true for a lot of artists. for me, one thing that I haven't even been through 100th of the kind of things that you've been through. Like, I'm the guy that you make fun of. It's like, oh yeah, valedictorian in college graduate is afraid of success and is getting executive coaching. Like, right? So we have very, very different experiences. But at the same time, I've been through a lot of things specifically with mental health and depression and like massive anxiety. And I realized that what I do here is my therapy. Writing a newsletter to my readers or writing a blog post, that's what gets me through all the darkest shit. And I think it's really important for artists to understand that's an outlet. It's a really important outlet. And you've made a very, very healthy living from essentially your own version of therapy.
Yeah, people say all the time. Someone said that to me. They go, you just do these stories so you don't kill yourself, right? And I started laughing. I said, yeah. I said at one time, I said, with my life, I could have been and could still ask for any antidepressant I want, and they would prescribe it to me. Instead, I chose to be an antidepressant. And that's that. When I wrote that, I remember thinking that it was one of those things that hit me like, that's exactly what I chose to do, because I get to get up in front, and whether it's writing the Armageddon Update with no audience or getting in front of audience, because I get to spew what I'm thinking. It A, sharpens my thinking, and B, lets this outlet go. So, because imagine me saying what I've said on those specials, just standing on a corner by myself, in ripped clothes, pushing a shopping cart. It's the exact same sentences. One guy's crazy and needs to be picked up. The other guy is talking about maybe getting a Netflix special. Sorry, not maybe.
See, it's all about language. It is. I tell my
maybe.
students that all the time. Don't say, I hope this happens. Say, I am making it happen.
Yeah,
right?
no, it's
Makes
happening.
all the difference in the world.
I'm getting a Netflix special in the next year. And by the way, thank you for keeping me clear. People, the word is all we have. Even the Bible. In the beginning, there was the word. The most important thing there is what you say and how you say it. Language is because nothing exists. Nothing in the world has ever existed until we said it. Tree was there, but no one knew what it was till someone said tree. Every word you say creates something, and it can create something negative or it can create something positive. You got to pick the right words.
Probably couldn't tie it up any better than that myself, even if I
Thanks,
tried.
man.
So on that note, for all of those that don't already know how to find you or follow you, what are the best ways to become a part of your world and your community?
Guys, if you want to see, so we put up the whole Titus series that Zach's talking about, which is very funny. 54 episodes is on at Christopher Titus TV. Because of COVID, I put up the first 8 of my comedy specials also on Christopher Titus TV on YouTube. You can watch them. Plus, we've done sketch shows. There's a whole bunch of content there. We do our podcast, the Armageddon Update, Titus podcast, where we pretty much, if you want the news in a way that makes you not want to, stab your eye out, go to that. Also, if you want to get anything on my website, DVDs, whatever, go to ChristopherTitus.com for updates on tickets and stuff. And just know I'm always going to be doing a new show, always going to be doing the next thing, because if you guys show up, I want to make sure that you get the best I got.
Well, I will make sure that we link to all of that in the show notes, and I thank you very much for your time, for your insights, and for your friendship.
And I will see you on Sunday, my brother.
Yeah, you will. Looking forward to it.
And my hands have healed.
Yes. Well, for now, we'll change that.
Yeah, no, I'll tell. They're gone on Sunday, but right now, yes. Thanks, buddy boy.